And so what I want to do is go ahead and sort of draw in my own lines here so that this isn't an n-gon any longer. So to do that, we're going to use the knife tool. So anytime we want to add edge loops or we want to draw in new edges, the knife is going to be a good way to do that. So to access this, I'm just going to real quickly hit the right mouse button and choose the knife. Now we need to make sure that the mode is correct for what we want to do. And I want to draw out manually new edges. And I don't want to go one edge at a time. I actually want to do maybe a few edges at a time. So I'm going to turn off single. Let's also turn off restrict to selection. I'm just going to start from the middle. And let's come across here. I'm just going to click on edges to add those new lines. So come across here. I'm just going to continue this all the way over to that middle, and you can see with our symmetry on that completes it all the way across. Just hit spacebar to switch back to selection. And now we can decide how we want to actually draw this out. So I think maybe coming in down this way and then across is a good idea. So let's use our knife and let's draw one more in across this way. Make sure we select the right edge all the way down to the middle. Let's do the same thing on the back. And we'll draw this all the way across. You may be tempted to just leave that n-gon, but it's really good practice to make your model as clean as possible. And part of that is getting rid of those n-gons where you've got them. And so I'm going to come in here and just draw this across, and it can finish all the way over on that side. Let's do the same thing here. And it can finish right up there. Now I'm going to leave these two because these are actually quads. Okay, we've got a corner there. So for the top, I want to start to add some thickness around this area. So I want to select those edges up at the top. And because we're working with symmetry, I'm only selecting half of the edges. So I'll select these kind of all the way around, just at the top. Now let's do an extrusion. So we can do an extrusion on the edges, just like with faces. So we'll do an extrude. I can kind of pull this out. Let's come in here to the attributes and change some things. So I'm going to change the edge angle, and let's change this to -90 degrees. And you can see that pulls this straight in and gives us a little bit of thickness. I can change the offset amount a little bit. Don't worry too much about this overlap in the center. So I think something like that is probably pretty good. Maybe more like 9. Okay. Now I want to have this edge line up right in the center. And so I can select the point. You can see these points are off a little bit. Same thing here. If they were exactly on the center, then the symmetry would work like it needs to. So we need to move those. So what we can do is, again, right click, and this time we're going to go to set point value. And here we can change the position of a point or selection of points. Here we've got a couple of points selected. So we want to choose an axis. So in this case, it's the x-axis. We want to set a value. 0 is what we want to set, and we want to use the world object. So basically it's going to set that back to 0 in the world along this x-axis. So in effect, it's going to snap those to the center. So let's take a look at that as we apply it. You can see it snaps those right to the middle, and that gives us what we want. Okay, now we do want this line here to line up with that detail on the front, and I think it lines up pretty well. You may want to just move it a hair, kind of right there. And so we need to start to add a little bit of detail there. Before we do that, let's actually add a bit more thickness on this. And so we've got the edges selected. Let's do another extrude. And we'll just pull this down. And I can, as soon as I extrude, all I have to do is just kind of pull that down in the Y. And there we've got that thickness added. And we don't need to add it sort of all the way through and have like a complete thickness on all this because we're going to have a head and different pieces in here to complete that. So that's the reason we don't need to have all that interior geometry. Now I want to have some detail right in here to make a nice seam. So to do that I want to add an edge loop. Now to add an edge loop we're going to use the same tool that we used, and that is the knife. So we'll select our object, go to polygon mode, choose the knife, and this time we're going to set the mode, instead of line, let's set it to loop. So now what we can do is come in and I want to select the open edge on this. So this is kind of that open edge right along there, and I can come in and select or put in an edge loop and just click, and you can see that loop went all the way around towards the back. Okay, so we get something like that, and you can see here where this kind of comes up and this kind of stays down at that level. So let's take our polygons on the top there. We'll just select these, and I just want the ones at the top all the way around, and we're not really concerned about the back, so we'll select those two. Deselect anything else that you might have selected. Let's go to the front view, and I just want to move those up slightly. So something like that. It gives us that little raised bit there. Now I want to add a seam in here, or a visible seam. So let's go back and get our knife once again. Let's add another loop right on that side of that loop, and then let's select those polygons. So I can select the polygons like that, or I can go into select loop selection, and this will help me select an entire loop of polygons. So in that case I can select that whole loop of polygons all the way around. Now let's do an extrude on those. Extrude, and I'm going to pull those in. Now you can see here the corners aren't really working like they're supposed to. And so what we can do is change this maximum angle up to 90, and that'll help. And then we'll just do a little bit of an offset there to create that seam. And now we've got a seam there. And we'll have to do a little bit more to make it look exactly the way that we want to, but let's get it to this point in this lesson, and then next we'll go in and begin to add the head and the seal geometry for that head.